I would like to start by outlining some group agreements for our time together, and also talk just briefly about the importance of group agreements. So one of the things that I have noticed in this larger conversation is that many people have had these conversations go poorly. Can I see by a raise of hands if you've ever had a conversation about race or racism go badly? I think just about anyone who's engaged in one of these conversations has had it go poorly. So that said, I think that it's important to try and create a safe space. I think badly for many of us means that we weren't heard, there was yelling, there was fighting, it ruined a relationship, people were being judgmental, etc. So what I would like to ask in this space is if we can agree to these basic group agreements. And this again is on side one of your handout that you're gonna stay on. So the first thing I'd like to ask is that folks work to respect each other in this space, to respect each other's ideas and opinions, to respect the possibility that the people next to you, the people across the room from you, might actually have a completely different understanding of respect. Particularly in a US framework, we have a really, really narcissistic cultural view, which says that my culture is the normal culture, right? My culture is how everyone else should be perceived or does perceive things. When in reality, the golden rule is sort of broken, right? Treating other people as we wish to be treated does not make any sense whatsoever, right? I love chocolate cake, so everyone should have chocolate cake. That doesn't make any sense. So finding out what folks around you describe as respect, I think, is a great place to begin with that. Being willing to take risk, putting yourself out there, asking questions, making space for people to not know everything. In reality, folks don't know everything about this, right? I think this is a conversation where part of what goes wrong is that it's different for each individual. Whether you are a person of color, whether you are a white person, whether you are any number of different identified groups within people of color, whether you're a white person who's an immigrant, right? Those are all very, very different stories and experiences. And so taking the risk of actually engaging the conversation in the space. Also, and if I can get everyone with me to sort of take a breath, and as you let the breath out, I want you to let yourself be okay with failing, because you're going to. I didn't come here to tell you how to do this right every time, because you're going to fail. It's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. It already happened for most of us, right? We've raised our hands. It will happen again, but that should not stop us from engaging the conversation. And I think the fact that folks are in the room says that you want to keep going with the conversation, even though you've probably messed up at some point. It's okay to mess up, but what do you learn from it? Where do you go? Openness, both of the things that I'm sharing as well as what you will be sharing with one another, as I named before. Everyone in the room has some racial identification. And we've all been socialized around that. Regardless, sometimes I've spoken with some folks recently who are new in the US context. So whether they're folks that are immigrants or folks that are here studying, and the construction of race looks a bit different. But nonetheless, even just being in the US for a short period of time, you really learn that construction and what it means. It might not be as deeply ingrained, but it's there. So being open to hearing the stories of the folks around us, the experiences of the people around us. Being willing to name ouches. When does a person say ouch? When something hurts. If you're 5 years old, you're getting picked on at the playground, you're very sad, you're crying, you go to the adult person who is taking good care of you. What are you hoping that that adult's going to do for you? Give you a hug? Give you some comfort? Let you know that life is okay? And that's amazing. And I think that, for me, that's the intuitive thing that I want to do. I think that we are honestly, I think we're pre-wired to be empathetic in that way. What happens if the kid is 17 and they're being picked on and teased and they go to the adult? Do they still get that hug as the first line of what's going on? What do you hear? Go ahead and yell out some of the things that you hear as a 17-year-old if you're sad and crying because you're being teased. Suck it up. Stop crying. Be the bigger person. Take care of it.
Just ignore them.
Ignore them. It does not make a lot of sense. And it's actually really poor communication. A huge piece of communication is the ability to be empathetic and to hear people. I think that we are built to be empathetic. One of the big things with ageism or adultism is that to become an adult, we actually have to let go of this space of being emotionally open and vulnerable. And I think you'll see with any oppression, including racism, that people who are in the power or privilege position also have loss, right? So that loss of becoming an adult and not having space to be emotional is not an okay thing. Also, unresolved emotional distress contributes to increased rates of ulcers, high blood pressure. It can trigger depressive episodes, and it can increase episodes of fibromyalgia or Crohn's disease if you have a predisposition, heart disease. A lot of people are doing research around the ties of that unresolved emotional distress to cancer. I don't want you to walk out of this room with more unresolved emotional distress than you came in with. All right? It's my finger crossed. If I do that, I think we're good. That said, if something occurs that is triggering, that is hurtful, that is upsetting, there is space to say ouch. You can say ouch as a key word. You know, you can just put your hand up in the air and wait until there's a moment to speak on that. But I want to make space for folks to be able to share emotional things that happen because this is an emotional conversation. Also is the oops piece, which is recognizing that nobody came here today to hurt your feelings. If your feelings do get hurt, I encourage you to name that ouch. And the person who is the person who ouched you or the oopser, I encourage you to treat it like you would, the way that you would treat accidentally running over someone with your car. Which is that when you accidentally hit someone with your car, you do not jump out of the car and see them bleeding on the road and argue with them about how it was not your intention to run them over. You jump out of the car and you say, oh my God, I just ran you over, let's get help. Let me fix oh, my tire is still on you, let me fix that. And I think if we can do that with these conversations about race and racism versus like, oh, but I didn't mean that when I said, fill in the blank of whatever microaggression came out of our mouth, I think we'll get a lot further. Participation is great. Passing is always an okay thing. Forced participation is no one's friend. It makes people really uncomfortable and makes people feel unsafe. And the goal today is safety. The goal today is not comfort, and there is a difference between the two. Safety is about feeling like your body and your person are physically okay, and that feels different for different people. Discomfort sometimes does feel like an increased heart rate. It can feel like something is going to happen to your body, and so I ask folks to examine that when you're pushing your own level of comfort in this conversation. But you are not required to share anything outside of your safe zone. Phones, if you have one, put it on vibrate or silent, which I apparently needed to do. If you need to take a call, do it where we can't hear you. Try not to be disruptive or interrupt the space. Education, exploration, we're all here to teach, we're all here to learn. Everyone here has experience with this, which means everyone here has at least something you can add to the conversation. And we're gonna really quickly be breaking down into smaller groups to have a little bit of intro conversations. So know that you have something to share. One of the most challenging things in the conversation of oppression and race and racism specifically is that frequently people in the agent identities, and so those people who are in the space of power or privilege, unearned privilege, oftentimes don't feel like they have anything to add to the conversation and they just sit quietly. From a person of color perspective, that's not what I want. Right? I want folks to push into that conversation. Don't be afraid of saying the wrong thing. I've already told everyone you're gonna say the wrong thing. But make that space to be both a learner and a teacher from everyone in the room. Shift back, shift up. If you're the only person talking in a room full of like 50 people at this point, I think, what does it mean if you're the only voice that we're hearing? It means that you're talking too much, exactly. If we're hearing you half of the time in a room full of 50 people, you're still talking too much, right? Think about that when you share. If you've shared 7 times in a discussion segment, maybe there are other people who have voice that could be expressed. It's an introversion, extroversion thing. I'm a really strong extrovert, and that's a piece of it. It also has to do with social identities. Adults tend to speak more than young people. Folks of color tend to speak less than white folks in shared groups. Men tend to speak more than women. One of the things that I name all the time is that not only is it my extroverted identity, I'm also very masculine of center, and that makes me feel like I own more airtime. So I just jump in because I should speak, right? That's what masculine of center people do. That's what male identified people do. So think about that. Think about, are you making space for the other voices, whether that's in your small groups or whether that's in the large group. Speak for yourself. That goes with confidentiality. What is said here stays here. This isn't a space for people to be invited to share things that are going on and share weaknesses and then have others go out into the world and talk about how folks suck. That's not the point of this. The point is to make space for people to share so that we can grow as individuals, as a larger community, hopefully do good. Stay focused on what you can do and what you can change. We have a very short amount of time to talk about many things. And then last but not least, having fun. Anything else that folks feel like you need in order to feel safe during our time together? If anything comes up along the way, I'm happy to add it. I would like to see by a thumbs up, a raise of hand, or a hearty continued nod of head until I make it all the way around the room that you're willing to abide by these group agreements. Folks okay with that? You okay in the, are you? Are you good with these group agreements? Yeah, okay. That's all right. Sometimes we don't listen to the questions, and I do that too. It's perfectly all right. Fantastic.